Lovely to see you all. I want to do just quickly tell you a little bit about me very briefly so we can get on with the presentation. I've worked in coaching and HR consultancy for too many years. I'm not going to share those. And my lovely colleague who I partner in business, Karen Jameson, is also with us today. Hi, Karen. Yeah, and it's nice to see some other faces I've seen elsewhere as well. We're looking at doing some team coaching as well and setting up a business called On Your Wavelength. So watch this space. But today I've come to talk to you about adaptability. And I can tell you, I've been through a bit of adaptability this morning because I'm being really Brené Brown honest here, daring greatly. This is my first webinar I've ever done. I've done lots of presentations in my life, sort of face-to-face on a stage, in a room, meeting room, etc., but not a webinar. But it's really good to be here. So I sort of feel that the words adaptability and agile, those words are sort of being bandied around a lot at the moment. And I'd like to just share with you through a few slides. And then we're going to have a bit of a breakout in the middle where I've put some questions out there for you to talk about in your breakouts. We'll come back and share some of your thoughts, some final few slides, and then I'm hoping, if I'm good at my timekeeping, we can do a bit of a Q&A if we have time at the end there. But feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat. If you want to capture them there, then if we don't have time, we can always come back to them later stage. And just to let you know, those who would like the slides, I think Joe will be putting a message out on LinkedIn. I'm happy to provide those and any research links I can. So anyway, I'll get on with it. I'll try and share my screen. So as Karen often says to me, bear with me, caller. I'll try and get this sorted. Host, you need to enable me, please.
I've done that. Sorry, I tried it this morning and did it. It must default each time.
That's okay. So let me go to that. Sorry, I wasn't at the beginning. That wasn't very... That was a very quick slide. There you are, it's all sorted now, done. We can go home now. Great, so why, I want to look at why adaptability is the #1 in-demand skill. So I'll take you through a few slides, and as I say, any questions, just chuck them into the chat. So we're going to look at adaptability, what the research is telling us, HRs role in adaptability, because most of you who are involved with HR recruit are HR directors, managers, or like me, executive coach, and dealing in HR consultancy. So then we're going to have a short breakout, so some reflections, some talk, amongst in smaller groups. Then we'll be looking at what is the AQ, the Adaptability Quotient summary, and looking at our model within the AQ and reasons you might consider AQ MEs as an assessment. So why adaptability? Well, many years ago, Charles Darwin, you may remember that chap, he actually said it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, it's the one that is most adaptable to change. So adaptability is not new, it's been around us for a long time, but it has become a bit of a buzzword recently, and relates to how we move through and adapt or don't to changing demands, business environments and expectations. And you know what, this last year through the pandemic, that has, we have definitely been in that place 10 times over. And that's where this sort of adaptability has come from, really, because we're living in such a fast-paced world now, both technologically, can't even say it, let alone use technical stuff, but technologically, as well as, regards how we're going to find the talent that we need, because that's one of the issues here. So, what does that mean for us? Well, a person reacts, if they're adaptable, they react to the inevitable ability of change, and lots of it. It's the single most important determinant. And interestingly, it is a form of intelligence, and our adaptability quotient, that's the AQ, can be measured and tested and improved. And I'll be looking at that a bit later after our breakout. But just to say, adaptability is not a static trait. The great news is adaptability is a skill that can be measured and improved, and that's what we'll talk about in the AQ. And it is the difference between thriving and declining. And adaptability is the capacity to adjust our thoughts and behaviours to effectively respond to uncertainty and change. And as I said earlier, we've had a lot of that recently. And you may remember, or you may be too young, but in 1995, EQ became really, really popular. You know, Daniel Goleman, and I became very passionate about EQ. And we've always had IQ about, but EQ started to explain more deeply around how we behave. And I always remember Daniel Goleman saying, you can get a job with IQ, but you get promoted with EQ. And with AQ, you will definitely be able to get promoted and also be that really good leader, be you an HR or wherever you are. And it is an ability that can be developed. So how you relate to change and uncertainty is a quality called adaptability. And it's the superpower that everyone on this planet needs to develop. Some of you may have looked at the video before you arrived today. So I'd like to, we're in this sort of time, sorry, I don't want to distract you with that, but we're in a time of sort of really, really, really fast change where surviving is versus the thriving is the future of work. And the other piece of research recently I read is in the next 10 years, how we see work now is going to change dramatically. 40% of the jobs that we see are just not going to be around. So I wanted to just headline some of the sort of key things that are coming out in the research. And I think they're all pertinent to those, of us who are in contact or working in HR. So as I've just said, we're going to see more change than we ever have in the last in the next 10 years compared to the last 100, which is quite scary, really. Because if I think back over my work career, the amount of changes I've seen in that time is just incredible. Just in this last year, I mean, I've got to learn how to use Zoom. But 95% of employees believe adaptability will be the top skill they need in the next 6 months. This is the Global Stakeholder Series, Future of Work Now. And again, here we've got 36% of employers globally report talent shortages in 2014, and that is a big issue, this talent shortage, particularly in leadership skills. And that's the highest percentage in 7 years. 54% of chief executives identified adaptability as the worst workforce trait most critical to their organization's futures. And 70% of chief executives don't have complete confidence in their organization's ability to pivot and adapt to disruptive events. And that was Deloitte research. So quite key findings, really, and quite concerning. And, I just remember, I wonder, are we prepared to support and mentor these people to make sure we've got the leaders of the next generation? Do you and your employees have the grit and resilience to compete? And we'll look at grit and resilience because they're part of the AQ later. Those are dimensions sub-dimensions we look at. And is your organization's change readiness up to par for a VUCA world? So just moving on, there's some very new research that one of my colleagues mentioned to me from DDI, and this is a global leadership forecast. And as you can see, there's a huge percentage of leaders that are very concerned about developing the next generation of leaders. So this lack of talent at the leadership level is becoming increasingly a concern. So keeping that in mind, it's thinking, how can we start to manage that issue? And being able to drive new product innovation as well, having people that are able to do that and adapt to major change, because this pandemic is not going away easily, is it? If you think about what's happening in India at the moment. And if it's not this pandemic, there'll be something else. So moving on. So HR's role for the future, because I've been reading quite a bit, and there's I'm actually working with an HR director in a large global organization with a view of trying to move their function from being an administrative role to being strategic. And it's a big ask, yet the COO is wanting HR to help him drive the business. And I think that's what's happening in a lot of other businesses too. And it's an opportunity for HR to actually step up into their real power and hopefully get their place at the leadership table, because this HR director that I'm working with does. So as I see it, some of the roles our HR leaders can help their companies accelerate business performance by assessing their organization's talent resources, which you will be doing already, but the AQ that I'm going to look at later is one of the tools that you can help to do that, and people practices and work models. And HR needs to become a sort of supply and demand expert, know exactly what's out there and what do they really need within the business, and knowing that up to date on a regular basis. And HR professionals say the most critical competencies for successful remote work include communicate, collaborate well with others, 60% of them, which is quite high, and manage time effectively, that lovely time management issue is always there, and take initiative and self-motivate. I think that's the bit that's different, and I think a lot of the millennials are very into that, taking initiative, very self-driven. So anyway, that's from Manpower. All the links, the references are on these slides. So I wonder, does this reflect your experience? So at this stage, I would like Joe's help to put it out into breakout groups. And I don't know if you want to take a screenshot of this or a copy on your phone camera or something, but these are some of the questions that I'd like you to consider in your breakouts. How do you respond to change, and how do you relate to the uncertainty of the future? Are you naturally open to change and disruption, or would you prefer to stay under the covers and pretend that you can make it all stay the same? So be honest, think about situations that you've had to deal with in this last year around adaptability, because many we have those skills, and like anything, we can grow them and develop them further. So looking through that lens of adaptability, this is another thought you can consider, reflect on. When and where can you see yourself using the skill of unlearning, resilience, and mental flexibility? Again, these are sub-dimensions of AQ. And this ability to unlearn something, then learn a new behavior is a real strength of adaptable people. And if you see yourself doing those things, you've been practicing adaptability. So the other thing that I've just asked you here is begin reflecting on your current life and work experience. What do you need to let go of to thrive in your current world? So if I can leave you with those thoughts, pick one of those that seems to resonate with you as a group. And Joe, so everyone's back. And is there a particular group who would like to feed back on what came out, which question they decided to look at and what came out of it? Or maybe you just had a discussion. Please share some of your thoughts. Let's just spend a few minutes doing that.
Yeah, I don't mind kicking off on our group. I didn't think it was 10 minutes though, because we never got through everybody to talk. If it was 10 minutes, it went too quick. I don't know what everybody else thought. But I made notes from at least two people that was in the group. There was Lizzie, who used to work at KPMG. He's now, he was on sabbatical, went back to work, and then no job. So he's adapting now, and it's really due to the environment, which is again back to COVID. For me, it was the similar, that not only COVID but IR35. I used to be program manager, and now I'm focusing and changing what I do. And then there was Jennifer, who, bad timing this, Jennifer, because we didn't really even have time to discuss this. She came over from India with a family 18 months ago to work here from being a HR practitioner in India, coming to the UK, and it's almost being at home all the time. So there's all the things of adapting to working in the UK, complete learning exercise, believing in herself while she's stuck at home. And we didn't get to everybody else in the group. So apologies. It was Karen, and I can't see the other picture. Oh, it's Julie was in the group, but we never got to them.
Well, thank you for sharing that, John. That's amazing, because there's some real evidence there of unlearning and learning again, you know, for you and Lizwe, you know, and Jennifer. I think it just highlights the significance actually of the change and how adaptable we can be as human beings when we need to. Sorry, everyone didn't get a chance to talk. We were trying to manage the time there. So anyone else want to add any thoughts as a result of their discussion in the breakout?
Yeah, I think we again, I think we were limited on time. We kind of got warmed up and then we saw the clock count down. But I thought it was interesting, you know, that we picked number 3 really as something to focus on, and the fact that, you know, time to reflect. And it was interesting how because I'm not in an HR function, I talked a little bit about how I've had to adapt both in terms of how I work and also how I work around my family and how we worked around each other and all that kind of stuff. But it was very interesting what Florence said about the fact that Florence is in HR, and obviously HR had to really step up to the mark to, especially in the early days of the pandemic, to just basically keep the businesses functioning and keep people working. And then moving forward, the more control elements of risk assessments and testing and all that kind of stuff. And Florence said that she only has just had time to reflect because she's been in the whirlwind, whereas maybe some of us have had a bit more luxury to not be in that and reflect a bit more. So that was quite interesting. But I think we ran out of time at that point. So Florence, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I thought that was really interesting.
Florence, would you like a chance to add in?
Yeah, no, what I was saying is it's true. We you know, as a HR professional, we were expecting to give the solution to everybody, to managers, to the organization, to employees, to managers who don't know what to do with suddenly their team working from home, how to deal with one who is struggling, with another one who's got family responsibility, you know, with so all kind of what the COVID has brought up. And as Ben was saying, yes, it's true. I just actually didn't reflect on it until this lockdown, and more specifically, as I say, I do you know, paddling on the sea, and this is the first time where it hit me about 2-3 weeks ago, because you're on your own, and there is something nearly spiritual about it, because the world is out there and you're in the middle of the sea, and you stop and it's just you, and that's where you start reflecting of saying, oh my God, I need that time. So what have I done? You know, I've done so much the past year. And that's when I only started reflecting, and actually I've started doing more things for myself now, and thinking about it, which I haven't for the past, you know, year really.
That pause is really important, and you're probably aware, Florence, that there's quite a lot of research that's saying that the function in business that's suffering the most is HR. They're under the most stress, most anxiety, because you know, people are coming to you saying, I need solutions for all of this. You know, how can I get my people working remotely? How can I then test them to come back to work, and the compliance as well. So well done though for taking some time out for yourself, because the caring and the well-being is another aspect that has come out of research that says it's so important that we start caring for people, that, you know, and looking at the well-being and our health, as you know, that's something I just hope that continues, that it isn't forgotten as we come out into our new normal. Any burning thoughts anybody else would like to add before I finish off?
I think that for me that there's one point about choice, and you know, having gone through what we've gone through and are still going through over the past, you know, 12 to 18 months, there are some situations, and we in our group we talked about unlearning and the fact that sometimes you have no choice.
Yeah.
That is the situation that you're in, and you have to adapt. And if you don't really adapt with support, then you are going to struggle. But the number of people that have adapted and just done it because really they have no choice, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, that's the sort of surviving versus thriving, isn't it? And you know, I think we are good at that. But it's also recognizing that when the oxygen mask falls, you need to put it on yourself first before you put it on your child, sort of thing. That you have to prepare yourself. And yeah, it's an interesting climate. So thank you, Steve. Martin, did you want to say something briefly?
Yes, one small remark. You mentioned already the pace of space, the speed of change, the pace of speed is pace of change has increased a lot lately, and I hear from a lot of people that have something. Okay, things are changing now very fast, but I'm catching up with it, and I'm okay. I think there we are missing a critical point. The speed of change is not increasing linearly; it is going exponentially up. Meaning, you can put it in a nice phrase that I once picked up: we never changed as fast as now, and we will never be as slow again. In our HR organization, we are for a part responsible to help our people to cope with change. That can be in people coaching our employees. That can also be with our leaders to help them actually with speed. Because our natural tendency to say, okay, we change till we're on a level, and then we plateau, and then we like to keep it stable. And we cannot get away with that one anymore. It's a paradox. So in order to do that, we first have to change a lot in our own way how we practice HR, a more agile version of HR. Only then are we actually able to create space for ourselves. Like I said, we need to pick up the oxygen mask ourselves first. We need, as HR, to learn to change faster than the rest around us.
Yes, there is that responsibility, Martin. And that feels quite heavy. But with the right support and the right tools, we can facilitate that. And you know, the pandemic has been this curveball that we just weren't expecting, particularly to this extent, you know, going on for over a year now. So thank you all for your comments, and I'm conscious of the time. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to move on to the last few slides, and then hopefully you might have a couple of minutes for questions at the end, or any thoughts that you might like to add. But thank you very much for taking part in that breakdown and coming back with those comments. So I'll just share my screen again. Okay. So just moving on from those questions, I'd like to just quickly, briefly introduce to you the AQ, or the Adaptability Quotient, which is a holistic measure of the workplace adaptability. And the higher the quotient, the more likely you will be to be able to recover from setbacks and find alternative solutions to problems and embrace change. And you know, as you've all been saying, the change that you've had thrust upon us has meant that we have been surviving and thriving and finding ways to come through it. And you know, adaptability is the capability to cope with change, and it's also the capability to hope through change, which is something that I coined as a result of the cope with change. But I think it's having that hope, it's that positivity. And I tell you, one of the other qualities that it's been talked about lots is showing your vulnerability. You know, particularly as leaders, if they're able to show their vulnerability, it develops trust, because there's something quite special about someone, you know, being human, showing their human, you know, their human side, that says, yeah, actually, as a leader, I'm also struggling with this, and it gives everyone the permission to be themselves, to talk about it, and that's all part of adaptability as well. So AQI is a research organization, and it's a company of entrepreneurs and behavioral scientists. In fact, Martin, you're also involved with them, and whose mission is to unlock the secrets of human adaptability, ensuring no one is left behind in the fastest period of change in history. And I've recently certified with them to work with their AQ Me assessment, which takes you through an assessment of these three main dimensions: ability, character, and environment. And as you can see underneath those, there are a number of sub-dimensions, which I won't go into all the detail now. If anyone's interested, we could talk about it later. But essentially, the AQ Me assessment, helps people build the courage, gain the confidence, and feel the hope to grow and thrive, because it gives you some information about where are you on the adaptability quotient, and also the ability to look at the opportunity to look at how can I grow particular dimensions. Maybe it's within the character or within your ability. How do I grow the sort of the grit we were talking about? And that there's a lot of research that they did on Angela Duckworth's work, where she talks about consistency. Saw a great article on LinkedIn about that this morning. But this mindset, needing to move into a growth mindset, I'm sure we're all very familiar with that term. And a number of you mentioned earlier about this unlearning, the ability to unlearn and then learn some new behaviors is crucial for us moving through this period of adaptability. So moving on from that. And some of my thoughts around how could an AQ Me assessment facilitate businesses, listening to Florence earlier, what are some of the tools that can support you? And the reasons for that, 12 out of the 16 skills identified in the World Economic Forum report as important for the 21st century are social and emotional skills, which are all part of the AQ. So there's lots of EQ within the AQ. And only 1 in 4 employees currently apparently has the ability, character, and or environment, because the environment is very important, to adapt to a VUCA world and keep up with the required pace of change. And businesses that are unable to adapt quickly to the quickening pace of technological change will find themselves left behind, which sounds quite scary, but yeah. HR directors need to step up as leaders in the 21st century, which I mentioned earlier. And just quickly to have a look at this is the World Economic Forum again, and they were particularly talking about education. So you can see, the sort of foundational literacies. But if you look at the character qualities, number 14 is adaptability, and above that is persistence, grit. So these are all qualities that, particularly as leaders, we need a high AQ for. So I'd just like to finish off here by with a few sort of reflections, really. What might be your reflections on AQ and the adaptability table, and if you have any questions. And as I say, if you would like to know more, I think Joe's going to, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to chat a bit more about it, because I've provided a real overview of what's a very in-depth subject. I'm sure Martin would agree with that, because we're both involved with AQAI. So perhaps I can hand over, I'll stop sharing, and we can all come back together. Are there any sort of thoughts, reflections anyone would like to share at this point before we?
Susie, Elaine has asked a question. So if anybody else has got some questions, you can either sort of put your hand up or put them in the chat. So Elaine has put, what is the research that AQ is based on, and how have reliability and veracity of the model been developed by the organisation?
Okay, well, I will just briefly answer this, and Elaine, I'm happy to have a more in-depth conversation rather than here, because I think we've only got a few minutes left. But I also I'm accredited to work with Corn Ferry Talent Q Suite, and they've been going for years, and they have hundreds of thousands of clients they've worked with, which act as a comparator-based group, which clearly is very helpful and quite diverse. And AQAI is really in its, the interesting thing about being involved at this stage is we're very much at the leading edge of the research on adaptability quotient, but they have got several thousands of clients where they draw on that information. But the research has been extensive, and I can give you further information, Elaine, if that's. Would you be interested in having, perhaps we'll have a further conversation, or I can send you some more information for you to look at. Their website's pretty good. They have a lot of information there. But thank you for your question. And they are very, very, very concerned about the reliability of it and the behind it. So.
Okay. Has anybody, Martin? Have you got a question?
No, I just wanted to reach out and support actually the question from Elaine, because I think it's an essential question. There are tons of psychometric tests going around, and often they are coming out of some kind of boulevard magazine or something like that. I can add a little bit to Susie, say that this is developed in combination with a professor in psychology who actually discovered this doing empirical research within a company, specific question for a company. They decided to actually take this model, develop it further, and set up this company AQAI. I won't go into the details for the statistics behind it. There's continuing ongoing research with it, and it has quite a high predictive validity. They are doing, I think it's September, a new round of research going through. But again, this is something that you can find on the AQIA website, or that you can actually talk with one of the founders about, say, okay, what is this? And they're happy to explain it. It's an essential question to solve, because I see so many companies using rubbish tests that don't mean anything. But understand what this test is doing. This is not telling you what to do. This is just a tool to start a conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, and it really opens up some powerful discussions and insights around adaptability within businesses.
Has anybody else got any other questions they'd like to ask Susie? No? Okay. All right. Well, I'd just like to say thanks very much to everybody for participating. Massive thanks to Susie for delivering the session. I'm sure that everybody's found it useful. So what I will do this afternoon is I'm going to put a post on LinkedIn, and I will obviously copy Susie into that. And then I will send out an email to everybody with the LinkedIn post on there. So if you do want to, connect with Susie, then, her details will be on there. We've also got, and I know there are quite a few of you who are on the call have already joined. We started a guild networking group about 2 months ago for HR professionals. We've got about 200 members already, and it's been really effective in terms of sort of sharing ideas, and it's a really great forum for you guys to ask questions, because you've got other HR members in there who can give you the answers. So I'll pop a link on there for that one as well. But yeah, thanks very much, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thanks, Susie.